well, ladies and gentlemen, now it is time for our panel discussion on cross-industry enterprise panel discussion, wherein we're talking about cyber security trends for enterprises in 2020. Creating effective endpoint security strategy, we're talking about cyber threat management, we're talking about establishing zero trust security framework, the impact of coronavirus on cybersecurity, and this and a lot more is going to be addressed in this panel discussion. We have with us our speakers, Fayaz Ahmed Badubai, the Group IT Director, AI Yusuf Group, UAE. Well, Fayaz is tech-savvy, new-age digital technology leader with 23 plus years of multifaceted international exposure in multiple business domains and a successful track record of spearheading digital transformation. We also have with us ABUBAKAR LATIF, the Director of Cybersecurity, BNet, which is the Bahrain network. ABUBAKAR is a cybersecurity strategist with 14 years of international experience in cybersecurity strategy development, data privacy, and a CERT design and implementation, and is also an advisor to the Telecommunication Regulatory Authority in Bahrain. We also have VIVEK GUPTA, Vice President, Head of Information Security, GEMS Education, UAE. Well, Vivek is an international cybersecurity leader with 20 plus years of enriched and unique cross-industry exposure and a proven track record of securing organization in partnership of business stakeholders with speed and agility. We also have Sam Ria, who's joining us back, who's the Director of Product, Cloudflare USA. Well, Sam Ria, a product director at Cloudflare, where he focuses on products in the Cloudflare 4 team platforms that secure users, devices, and data. And this entire panel discussion is going to be moderated by VARUN SRIVASTAVA, cyber threat intelligence leader, who's joining us back from Mubadala, UAE. Well, VARUN SRIVASTAVA is a cybersecurity professional with 13 plus years of experience in this domain. He also serves on the advisory board of startups to contribute towards the organic growth in their offerings covering blockchain technology and e-commerce. Well, thank you so much to our incredible panel who's taken out their time and joined us today. Over to you, VARUN, for taking it forward.
Thank you so much, Bhavna, for that lovely introduction. And thank you, panel, for joining in today. So what we can start with is, as Bhavna mentioned, there is need for us to discuss, cyber security across different spectrums that, we currently work with. And I feel cyber threat management happens to be one of the major things that we can start to discuss with. So in the current times of pandemic and COVID-19, what I see is there has been an uprise in a lot of similar attacks that have happened in 2019, but with more rapid frequency. So in my experience and across the industry that I've worked with, I see that across the past quarter or so, I've seen ransomware, which has become more prevalent and more targeted. I see that attackers are actually gathering a lot of intelligence about their targets before they're actually, planting payloads to do some kind of ransomware strike. That is one thing that I see happens to be a major factor in the attacks that are happening. Second thing is about business email compromise, which is phishing. Which again, again is a very rudimentary way of attacking by these cyber hackers. But it still remains one of the top vectors that attackers use across the organizations to target, let's say, high-value targets or target, something which is of strategic interest for them. So apart from them, I've seen increase in mobile malware attacks, increase in different facets of cybersecurity being exploited by these cyber attackers in order to exfiltrate critical information from the organization. So in the wake of these recent trends, it would be great to start the discussion and understand that, what you see from your perspective are the top challenges you are facing in cyber threat management, and what are the current steps that you're taking in order to ensure that, we are kind of getting protected from these attackers who are becoming more and more targeted and gathering, specific intelligence about our organizations. So we can start with Fayaz. Fayaz, would be great to have your input in this regard.
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for including me in this great panel. And thanks. I'm also expecting to learn from all the experts in this panel. I hope I'm able to hear, you're able to hear me, Varun?
Yes, clearly. Thank you.
Okay, so although I'm not a cybersecurity expert, but because I'm managing that division also, I'll put my perspective from a simple point of view. See, we all know that as a human history or human evolution, we all do the migrations. So it's not just humans. Even today, Netflix, I was watching on our planet. So even birds migrate from one place to another place. Animals migrate from one place to another place. So the basic need of migration is to go to a place where it's more secured and safe, and where you can have livelihood and food and shelter. This is what the human needs, or the main intention. That's why people tend to move to the different places. And if you see, people also try to migrate to UK or New Zealand or Australia, I mean different countries. So assuming that will be more better safe there for our future generations as well. So same way, if you see from organization point of view, I think an employee is joining an organization, assuming that employer has taken care, like the government is taking care of the security and law and order to have people or citizens to live safely. In the same way, we expect the organizations also have some security measures taken care for any employee to work in a safe and neat environment, so that we can have awareness and remove the threat, of course, having intelligence and all. So if you relate from that point of view, what I feel is the companies and organizations, the governments who are providing more safer environments are the choice for the companies. Especially after this COVID-19 situation, you can see the hell lot of difference. People who are not doing yoga, they're doing, people are not doing exercise. So whole focus is on health and security. Like we say, if you're living, only something is there, right? So that's more important now. So coming to the point of having a strategy, I mean, if you ask from Al-Yusuf Group point of view, we are a 18 plus companies. I don't want to go for a detail. We can see in the website, but majority of our flagships are automotive, and you can say we are the LG distributors. Automotive, we have Yamaha, Suzuki, and marine vehicles, MG cars also. We did see the kind of change happening in the businesses is there is more incline coming towards going digital. Yeah. So having mindset of, having a mindset change going towards digital is a great start. But at the same time, on one corner, the security angle, if you don't include it from the idea of beginning point of view, we are going to have a problem. So in our company, what we are doing is, there are some strategies we are following, which will include like endpoint strategy, and you'll have the firewall strategy. So like that, we have planned malware protection, all those things are there. But I would say the right strategy of any business idea has to include an angle of cyber security in the mind. So that because having a strong security layer at the IT environment, whether you're in cloud or on-premise, doesn't matter. But if you're having a security layer, that gives more presence of digital in a secured way. This is what we feel, and we have laid down some security strategies. I think this is what I can explain for the questions and all, which includes like awareness is a key, which includes security policies, and having controls is a great start to have if you don't have. And you need to have endpoint security, like to protect from malware. Patch management you should have. Web internet security also you should have, like we're using Etsla Zscaler, so that every person who's working at office or home should have the same privilege kind of thing. And you should also have proper network security through multi-layered firewall security, email security, and ideally we should have a SIM kind of solution, so that it's not practical for anyone in IT department to sit and monitor what's going to happen. Even though you have dashboard, you still need some machine learning algorithms and AI kind of enabled algorithms to monitor and secure your environment. See, at the end, whatever you spend, whatever infrastructure you have to rely on the data backup strategy, which is the only choice you have. So these are all the things which will allow you to have business continuity, disaster recovery, everything as a secured layer for operating your business. This is what we are following, even though we are not 100%, but there is a strategy to make it at least 99%. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think, thank you, Mr. Fayaz. I think that is the way to go, because, as we know, no organization can be fully secure, but then, we have to reach a state where we can see that, we are covering all the aspects as much as possible. But then, leaving very less room for, attacker to actually come in and, take something which is important to us. Thank you so much. Mr. Abubakar, I think we can, would be great to understand your insight in this regard. Please help us understand, your perspective on cyber threat management and any recent enterprise trends that you saw have been, upcoming in the recent times.
Right. Thank you, Varun, for this. Good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to be on this panel. Obviously, you've mentioned an extremely important point as to how COVID-19 essentially has been an accelerator in digital adoption, and what that has done essentially is from a cybersecurity perspective, increased our dependency on the digital ecosystem, and that essentially means that the role of cybersecurity becomes extremely important in enabling this digital drive and digital transformation. From a usual average of, say, for example, about 5% of your workforce working remotely, you now have an environment where about 90 to 95% of them are essentially working remotely, and that would be the new normal as well. We may not be touching 90-95 in normal times, but then essentially businesses are actively looking at about 50% or 60% of remote workforce as a new normal. And what that does essentially is it creates those elements, distributed elements across your ecosystem, and expands your cyber threat landscape, and which makes it a lot easier for the threat actors to compromise individual edge points while they're entering into your environment, rather than sorry, having to focus centrally on your core security controls, defending your traditional perimeter, so to speak. And in that sense, you rightly mentioned the rising threat around ransomware, and the rapid techniques that are being used by threat actors to, say, for example, run campaigns, false, fake campaigns related to COVID-19, providing information that happens to be not true, because the time that average user spends on verifying a certain piece of news is a lot lesser now because of the pandemic situation. And what that does is it creates those areas of compromise for users as well, and that's why phishing has become such an important aspect and has become an important part of the larger game when it comes to the cyber threat actors trying to penetrate into networks. A lot of other aspects related to mobile networks, and how as we transform from the 4G to 5G networks, we see increasingly there are significant amount of vulnerabilities that are coming to forefront, and I think that would be the new frontier for cyber threats to emanate from. And I think that's another area of concern that we have as the traditional boundaries between the telecom network as we used to know it and the cyber environment continues to become more blurred. I think those gray areas are the most ideal point for any cyber threat actor to compromise and to create large scale damages, because the moment you could compromise a certain cell tower or a certain critical node within the telecom network, the impact that you could have is much greater than having to, say, for example, compromising a single enterprise. Much more like, say, for example, the cloud environments, and that would be just another one of those major cyber threat vectors where the cloud providers are increasingly under attack. And what my cloud transformation does as an organization is it puts me into the same pool as, say, for example, another entity which would be probably attracting a lot more threat actors or threats across the world. And because I'm in the same cloud virtual space as that person or that entity, it does become part of my extended threat ecosystem. So these are the kind of threats that are driving our strategies as we move forward.
Thanks a lot, Mr. ABUBAKAR. Thanks. I think you touched very important topic of 5G networks, especially rolling in and bringing up us to larger speed. But then with greater speed, comes greater risk of our devices getting exposed. So, for example, in the connected world, I was just in the earlier panel, we were discussing about IoT security. I was discussing about OT, and all of them getting exposed because of the current environment. But then when we have 5G also coming in, more and more devices are going to get connected. So that becomes a larger landscape to protect for us and larger landscape for attackers to target. So on that note, I would switch over to now Mr. Vivek. Would be great to understand your insights on cyber threat management and what challenges are you currently facing. Would be wonderful to understand some learnings in this regard.
Thank you, Varun. Am I loud and clear?
Yes, pretty much. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Sneha. Thank you, Bhavna, for this invitation. Thank you, my peers in this session and audience. Good afternoon, everybody. I will respond to the ask from Varun in 3 buckets. The first bucket is, as Bhavna had introduced, I've been in the security space for more than 2 decades. I still remember that we made firewall and IPS using IP chain. I don't know how many have heard a word called IP chain, IP tables. I developed firewalls, and those days I remember in SIFI in 2004 we had deployed them also. The firewalls were new, they were costly, and small run companies were developing firewalls. Antivirus was in-house product. So it's a more than 2-decade-old journey which I've done. Being a CISO, this is the 4th CISO stint and 5 security leading roles, whether with Fidelity. Fidelity is like JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs. It's the world's largest mutual fund company. I was CISO for them. I was like ABUBAKAR, I was in the world's top 5 telecom company, which is Airtel. I was with Landmark Group in Middle East. We all know how big or small it is. And now I'm with GEMS, which is the world's largest K-12 educators, with presence in more than 10 schools, more than country operations in 10 countries, and more than 100 schools with nearly 2 lakh students. I've also worked with Deloitte. I worked with IBM. So with this vast, that's the first bucket. The second bucket is coming to what Varun said on the cyber threat, which ABUBAKAR and Fayaz also have given insights. I will respond to that part of my discussion in 2 buckets. And the first bucket is, how is the risk which has changed? We heard from both the leaders that the digital footprint, if I still remember in IBM, when I would go and meet the customers and give presentations and all at that point of time, 2004, 5, 6, in that time, also the businesses were slowly moving to digital. They were getting IT, the EDP officer became an IT manager. And that was the transition which was happening. And that journey in mid-2000s and all, the telecom sector and the financial sector started speeding up. Slowly, late 2000 and early 2010 onwards, we saw other sectors also, whether it was energy sector, whether it was retail sector. So these sectors also, with their business volumes growing and manual things not being day-to-day way, so they all started moving digital. So the business transformation was digital. Now coming to today, COVID-19, good, bad, ugly, has become a catalyst. It has exponentially speeded up this drive. So what was happening in an incremental manner, it has become exponential. I speak of GEMS. GEMS Education was doing most of the teaching, and if your kids are going to school, you would have seen they were going to school, they were learning in school, but suddenly all this thing has changed, and now they are sitting at home and doing remote online learning. The hybrid model has come into play, and that's the way it has happened. Similarly, the retail sector, we all used to go to shops, malls to do the shopping. Suddenly the retail paradigm has shifted, and it become the e-commerce has gone up, and the numbers of e-tailers itself speaks volume from that perspective. So the business process has changed, number one. Now, what does that mean? The second bucket, from the same bucket, I have 4 bullets. So business model has changed. The second item in the same thing is the threat has changed. Whether the external or internal, the threat has changed because of this COVID-19 and going digital, the attackers have also gone more digital. They have seen that their normal way of criminal activities, the ones which were doing physical criminal activities have also gone digital. Now phishing attacks have gone up exponentially. Why? Because they saw that this is another way of attacking and making their end objectives. So the external attacks have gone up. The internal attack from the threat perspective, because of resource optimization and because of cost optimization, we have seen the headcounts coming down, the salaries getting optimized. So there is a little bit of the feel-good factor in the employees getting impacted, and different organizations are feeling the different internal threat also. So we have external threat, we have internal threat also. So one is the business process has gone so digital, the threat landscape has gone up, and then the third one is vulnerabilities. Now vulnerabilities, as we are speaking of vulnerabilities, because the attack surface, because as we said, the business thing has gone up, so the attack surface has become more infrastructure is now digital. Most of us are now sitting at home. The homes have a rudimentary environment. They have routers, there's no firewall, there's no email protection, and the endpoints are exposed to the dangers. So the vulnerabilities have gone up from that point. So we have, the perspective of number one, the business landscape has, digital has gone up, the threat has gone up, the vulnerabilities have gone up. So if you see, what does the risk comprise of? Risk is equal to, we say, threat multiplied by vulnerabilities multiplied by the assets of the critical assets of the company, or the crown jewels of the company. So if all the three pillars have gone up, the risk posture has gone up. So I think we saw Fires also telling that, we saw ABUBAKAR also telling that the overall risk has gone up, and Varun, you were also sharing from the overall perspective that the overall risk posture has gone up. Now, if the risk posture has gone up, then what are the mitigating ways from that perspective? And then again, it boils down to the, some of the responses, whether, phishing, whether it is ransomware, whether social engineering, they have all been said, but I will again summarize it. If these are the three pillars, which is threats, vulnerabilities, and the critical assets which needs to be protected, the mitigating factors will be in two buckets. There will be technical and there will be social. The social is, as we heard, that people awareness. We saw phishing attack or ransomware attack. These all are now leading to awareness. For example, the challenge for for education sector is I have to also help the parents. The parents, we are telling the parents, please go digital. E-tailers are telling, please go digital to do the shopping. But somewhere else, we have to educate them also. They are not up to the, that grade. So education on the mass has to be up and about. Credential theft are happening. One of the things we see that the credential loss, people are doing social engineering attack and credential loss happening. And how do you mitigate that? So awareness. So that is on the social part, the social engineering attack, and related to that, we have to address that. And on the technical side, we saw that fundamentally, we all know that as per ISO or as per any best practices, whenever the environment undergoes a major change, you should undertake a risk assessment. So one is, if your environment has undergone a change in posture of business, we should undertake an assessment. And if that assessment is undertaken, then we'll know that these crown jewels suddenly, which were medium risk and low risk, have become high risk. If that is the case, then we need to put in anti-phishing measures, anti-malware measures, anti-ransomware measures, or we have Cloudflare-like partners coming and helping us deploy WAF. Incidentally, we use Cloudflare for WAF protection in our schools' portals and all. So we have to put mitigating controls in place from that perspective. So mitigating both from social and technical perspective needs to be placed to ensure that the cyber risk posture, which has gone up, is having equivalent, if not more, mitigating controls. Thank you, Varun.
Thanks a lot, Vivek. I think that is a wonderful insight, very detailed, and especially I like the part where you brought in risk becoming one of the driving factors for organizations to make decisions and drive cybersecurity. So also I've seen in the recent times there is a very thin line in how risk teams and cybersecurity teams are working in tandem. So because again, risk and cybersecurity happens to be part of the same coin, but two different sides. But in recent times, they have to work very closely to ensure that the moment that the cybersecurity team reaches out to risk and asks them to do some kind of remediation, they have to take immediate cognizance of that and take action as per the recommendations. So on that note, I like to bring Sam in, and would be great to understand from, let's say, Cloudflare, or from your personal experience perspective, how do you see cyber threat management taking shape in the current situation, and what are the key challenges or key trends that you have observed in the past maybe 5 to 6 months?
Sure. Varun, thank you for having me here today, and hello to everyone else on the panel. Everyone so far has talked a lot about how the environments have become more complex. Resources live in more than one environment now, hybrid cloud models or public cloud models. And on the other end of the equation, users are in more than one environment as well. In general now, they're in every environment. They're at home, or they were previously traveling. They're anywhere but the office today. And so there's this kind of fractal of complexity on both sides of this equation. But one thing that, we being Cloudflare and the network that we operate, one thing that we focus on, because it's part of our DNA, part of our background, is all these challenges begin and end with a connection. A phishing attack begins and ends because whether it was an email link or someone impersonating someone else on chat, I was convinced to make a connection to enter credentials in a place that they did not belong. Or if it's a data exfiltration attack, my device might be leaking data on a port that I'm not aware of. All of these things begin and end with control over what is happening at the network level. And when we think about that at Cloudflare, we think a lot about what are these sources of signal that can inform how we filter and don't filter those connections. Because of course it is more important than ever that we make it easy for people to connect to the resources that they need. They're at home, they're not down the hall from IT help desks. They are trying to balance working while also being part of their families, or being effectively the teachers for their kids' schools while kids are learning virtually. They are busy. Getting out of their way as a security team or as an IT team is really important. So we want to make sure those connections are performant, and those connections are connections to those resources are very accessible. But at the same time, that means that our filters have to be even smarter. So when we think about security as this landscape changes, there's kind of that first 10 years of the resource changing, moving to a public cloud model, moving to SaaS applications. And now we've taken those 10 years of that resource changing, we've condensed it into 3 months of the user changing on the other side of the equation, with people working out not only outside of the office, but all over the world from home, remote locations. And there's kind of one thing that connects the two, and that is that network connection between users that should be able to connect to these resources, and a network connection that is smart enough to filter out the malicious attacks that should not be able to connect to these resources, whether they be individuals or some other type of attack. And when we think about it that way, we're able to really focus our efforts on, there's a few things that we know and a few things we don't know. We know certain sources of signal about users, and I think a lot of people mentioned phishing. We know whether or not users are using hard keys, and you can use that to inform the network. We know certain things about devices that users are using, and we can use that to inform the network. All of these challenges are still rather complex, but when you focus on something that is common to all of them, you're able to really invest in taking data, taking intelligence, taking signal and context, and making smarter filtering decisions between those two users and resources on both sides of the equation.
Thank you so much, Sam. I think very insightful information on network connection and bringing that up. From whatever discussions we had, I think one of the common themes that I've seen is what I see is in the organizations, basically, we can put as many controls as possible, but when it comes to people, that is, maybe insider threat, you can call it, or you can call it awareness issues or something like that. But when it comes to people, it is always very important to keep that in mind while we are building our cybersecurity strategy. So I think Fayaz also mentioned, Vivek also mentioned, ABUBAKAR, everyone mentioned that, people aspect is something which, we have to take care. So on that aspect, I think there is a question from one of the participants here about, what kind of, let's say, measures could we actually implement in our organizations wherein we can involve, for example, youths to take up cybersecurity, or engage in cybersecurity and ensure that there's some kind of enhanced security awareness inside the organization. So we can maybe take a couple of minutes and do a closing remark on this, starting with Fayaz.
Yeah, I think it's very important to put the youth into the picture, because it's a future generation. I would say youth, it has to start from schooling level. I think Vivek rightly touched this. Even all three kids go to GEM school. So initially it was difficult, but now we are in a blessed country. So where infrastructure and internet, everything is available so easily, of course, at a spending of money. But my point of view from youth presence, I think, I know it's our difficult times, but these are all temporary situations. See, if I'll just spend not more than 2 minutes. I do understand that time constraint is there. See, COVID-19 has made a big mindset change in everyone, okay? And it also made them to understand what's the passion. Even I'm exploring YouTube, being like a YouTuber, making Khawali or making some kind of videos. So everybody has to understand what is that they are interested in pursuing as a career, yeah? See, many people, even including my times, I'm not a computer science engineer by academics, but I became like a hardcore coder. So because of my passion. So everybody has to understand their passion. Yeah. Even you are seeing like husbands are becoming cooks, and sometimes wives help us in the barbering activities. So these are all becoming and making the bond more attractive towards each other. So when it comes to suggestion, I would say even from schooling level also, now I just last week I opted for complete online, because I still have some concerns sending my kids to the school. So they are happy, but only thing what they are missing is the social interaction. That's what is the main as the overall strategy of the child growth. So I'm sure by November, I think hopefully, so social element also will come into place. So even though there are blended opportunities given, what I would say is the education, like we educate our employees or the colleagues as a campaigns, right? Like on the cyber security awareness and all. So once you have to tell the impact in case an incident happens, what is that is going to impact the business down, the data loss, whatever kind of productivity loss, all those things. When you explain to the people, then only they understand and they try to become good netizens or good employees in the organization. Same way, if you impart the knowledge from schooling or youth level, what is that cyberbullying? What is that cybersecurity? It has to come in the mindset from the younger stage itself. Then only you can expect. See, at the end, we are thinking like we are human beings. We should protect ourselves from cybersecurities or threats, right? On the other side, the attackers are also human beings. They feel they are doing right job. We feel we are doing right job. It's like Shaitan and Allah or Bhagwan. So in the same way, we have to educate our children to make sure that in future problems do come, but how is your preparedness to protect from them, and how proactive you are, and how you are trying to follow the rules and regulations set by the country and government and organization. I think this is the way the focus has to come into the, even including the school curriculum and all. Cybersecurity has to be a chapter, I believe. So because everything is going digital, so social interaction is more about public and family. I don't know, many you have seen in India, right? Global education policy changing. They won't be surprised. Harvard universities or Oxford universities may coming, like in Dubai. There may be data centers coming. And IIT Madras, this year onwards, they started online bachelor science in computer science, which is a fantastic thing. Completely 100% online, even though there are some exams. So when things are going digital, we cannot leave our future generation aside. So they don't face hard realities when they start the jobs as productive. I feel the future generation has to know what cybersecurity means. It has to be there in their curriculum or academic or as a experience. This is how it can. But one last advice I would give, like any book you take, Quran or Bhagavad Gita, it also, I'm reading because of this COVID-19, I'm becoming more spiritual, not from other point of view, but to understand what is that history is saying. And there is one surah, it says clearly, the difficult situations comes to every person in life at one point of time. But at the same time, without losing the hope, if you follow the good direction from adults or from seniors and from books, there is an easiness waiting for you. This is what I think the whole life. So difficulties has to be faced with a positive hope. I think inshallah all the future will be good. This is what my advice is. Thank you.
Thanks, Vyas. Thanks for that techno-spiritual motto at the end. Pretty much valid out here. So I think, yes, pretty much, when youths, for example, who are getting onboarded in our enterprises, coming fresh from colleges or even, schools, they have to have some kind of awareness that, for example, if there is a certain kind of link that is coming in their emails or attachments that are coming in their email, which is very rudimentary primary form of attackers getting inside our environment. So they have to be aware of these things right from the beginning. So over to Abubakar. Would love to have your insight as well in this regard.
Right. Thank you for this. I think this is a pretty interesting discussion because a few of the words that resonate with us is one is the word culture. Second is the word youth, because we have to understand one aspect that culture inherently takes time, and it needs commitment. And one of the ways is really to make sure that the new employees or the younger employees are first are provided with the right context, because it means something to be part of a certain organization, and it means something to carry out certain actions when online, and their behavior is going to be defined by how much they understand the consequences of what they're doing online, right? And a lot of that has to do with the understanding of the fact that the moment you have access to, say, for example, your laptop or your phone connects to the corporate resources, you are subject to an attack. You are part of the threat ecosystem of the organization. It's extremely important to understand that aspect and making sure that that the employees are made aware, and there's enough mechanisms in place to keep them involved, engaged, and to help transform their behavior, because it does take time to transform that. And once you've done that, it's extremely important to continue to test them. Gamification is something that is actively coming through into our work environment, and realizing the fact that a lot of these people don't have more than 3, 4, 5, 6 minutes of time, and to be able to fit it within that schedule and making sure that the message is concise and clear and easy to understand for a general wider audience is extremely important for that message to ring home as well. And when it comes to the skill sets, obviously this is the first generation that's really starting off in a purely digital world, and where digitization is really at the forefront of how we are educating individuals. So a lot of these individuals are tech savvy. It's extremely important, like a lot of my peers have mentioned, to take this education of cyber safety, cyber security back into schools, and making sure that these individuals very early on, while they're using social media or interacting with their friends through these social mediums, are able to have a socially safe behavior. So a lot of that needs to fit into our larger culture transformation of the youth.
Thank you, Abubakar. I think that's wonderful insight. I think the point where you mentioned about gamification, testing, and engaging them on a regular basis is something which is definitely a requirement across the enterprises. So I think Bhavna is here, so we are almost on the close of the time. So Vivek, I would invite you for a quick closure on this, closing remark on this, and after that we can follow up with Sam.
Thanks. A quick closure on such an important topic. I have to challenge myself. So I think Faiz and Abubakar have already mentioned most of it. I will just reinforce two things. That in my case, the challenge is one, we have parents and students who are not employees. So we have a bucket where it's our responsibility to educate students also that what are the best online practices. Faiz very rightly brought out that cyberbullying is one of the very important things. We have seen incidents in multiple countries, cyberbullying leading to what kind of drastic impact. So things around that are necessitated. And just to share with everybody that we have made a cybersecurity online guide for parents and students. And that's something organizations where they have such kind of work, where they have a responsibility. I've seen telecom companies sending SMSs and messages that how to protect the OTP, how to protect online work, and also somewhere the awareness for people who are not employees is one bucket that has to go on industry agnostic wherever it is a B2C model. And the second part is from the employee's perspective. My experience of multiple companies have shown the induction, the joining time, there is a mandatory security assessment done. So if your organization is so digitally savvy and has such a critical impact on security risk, you cannot lower your guard by having a fresh induction, not security savvy. So it may not be high-end security, but basic security elements should be there. Annual or biannual, depending on the maturity, has to be a security training done. Organizations have gone one step further, that they have linked it up to bonuses and increments also, that if you have not done, you will not be eligible. So there has to be carrot and stick policy. Security is non-negotiable. Simulation, security gamification, all these things, catching employees in the trap, these are part of knowing the effectiveness. You have done the training, but how effective it is, that can only be measured through some simulation exercise and play safe. So, and it's a continuous process. So employees perspective and our customers B2C perspective, both aspects have to be taken care. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Vivek. Thanks a lot. I think best practices part where you touched in, and especially when we are onboarding new employees, it's where cybersecurity has to be given a mandatory output to all the employees. On that note, Sam, would be great to have your closing remark.
Yep, I'll just conclude with everything else everybody's saying. You also have to build a culture where people are willing to raise their hand and admit they made a mistake. If people are terrified of saying, hey, I think I clicked on a link I should not have, they're never going to report it. And then something that could have been caught after 10 minutes is going to take 10 days. And by then it's a problem that you cannot untangle. You need to create a culture that where people are willing to raise their hand and say, hey, I need help. I think something went wrong.
Thank you, Sam. I think that's again a very valid point, because we see that culture of basically not having open door policies in our organizations is where we see a lot of mistakes happening on the employee side, and they come out with something which has already happened a long time in the past, and it has been there lurking around the corner, maybe exfiltrating a lot of data in the past, but now we have caught it, and it's been too late now. So I think that's a pretty much good closing remark to close the session. And thank you everyone for joining today. Very wonderful insight.
Just 1 minute before the entire incredible panel departs, there are a couple of questions from the audience. I know we're falling in short of time.
Sure.
But if you can just address them in a combined way, I'll just take out two questions. One is Sachin's asking, how can you implement data security and how do you convey to the users on security importance? That's the first one. And the second one being Dr. Mohammad Kashid asked that what are the challenges and opportunities using cybersecurity systems? So if you could just combine, Varun, and direct that to your panel just for that final one-to-one.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bhavna. So for the data security part, I think this is one Achilles heel which each organization actually face on a daily basis. Having a centralized data classification policy is one of the starting points to have data security strategy in place, and securing that data and preserving the integrity of that data is again one of the major factors while we are having data security strategy brought in by our architects. So on the controls and solutions side, I see that DLP is one of the solutions that organizations have to implement in order to ensure that whatever data is actually traveling inside, outside, across the technology ecosystem of the organization is mapped properly. So on that note, Fayaz, if you can have a quick remark on data security inside your organization, that'll be great.
Yeah, I'll not take much time because I know the respect of time is there. See, everything I agreed, Varun. Practically, we faced some small incident. So that created a awareness of what is the meaning of the loss of the data. How business, like I was mentioning, like business may govern. What we are following at Al-Yusuf is we have regular drill exercise as if attack happens. So what happens to the once you make down? So this awareness is more important, and you also need to think about adapting cloud as a strategy, which I think was not touch based in this whole discussion. I think people have to think of adapting to the cloud, whether it's IaaS, PaaS, SaaS, whichever it is, which as per their convenience, because this will be more secured in a more secure and also in a better manner, because your business continuity, all those things will help you to protect your data and secure your data. Because as I said in all the strategy, at the end, if everything falls back, you have the only hope of data stored, right? So you have to have a strategy to have regular exercises, to have the data drill exercise as if something happened. So that's my suggestion on this point.
Thank you, Fayaz. Thank you. I think, yes, pretty much, unless and until we don't understand, what kind of data we have and the expanse of data we have across the organization, we'll never be able to, have protection around this most important part in an organization. So over to you, Vivek, your quick inputs on that.
So my 2 cents will be that, Varun, what you mentioned, that the first step is to identify the crown jewels. When we say data protection, we should be very clear what is this data. So we have to have a data register. The data register will identify these are the data elements by different departments of different criticality. So we know an organization have these are the crown jewels. Then the second part is to see the data flow diagram. How is the data flowing? What are the ingress points? What are the egress points? And from the data flow diagrams, we will come to know that it's through internet, it is through USB, it is through printer. How is the medium of data flowing? So if these are the two things, from the data lifecycle perspective, different controls are there. When you are creating it, automatically, if you put mandatory tools, the data classification tools, then that document, if it is a Word, Excel, PowerPoint, it will mandatorily demand classification. So you have tools like that. You have then if DLP, if the egress point is through internet or egress point is through email and the DLP is there, or you are USB blocking, and also how do you control the data flow from that perspective? Then you have RMS-like tool, which will tell how long the life of the document is and with whom. So there are different technology control, but first and foremost step, which Varun, again I'll reinforce of what you said, if you don't have the data register and you don't have your policy on data classification from that perspective, these two are fundamentals to take the next step. Thank you.
Thanks, Vivek. Thanks. For Sam, I have a slight twist in the question. So basically, I would like to understand from you, what are the challenges and opportunities that you feel, or trend you feel, which may protect data security in the near future? What are the key, let's say, controls that you feel may be coming out in next quarter or so, which may be helping to build more security around data?
Yeah, anything that can be done inline in a network is going to become more and more important, and anything that can be done closer to where the data lives in a world where users are operating and working everywhere. But one thing I will say, just to end here, start somewhere. If everyone's going to try to optimize for the perfect implementation of the solution, no one's ever going to start. Begin a solution and kind of build towards good rather than waiting for perfect.
Thank you, Sam. So I think this last question around data security would require a separate panel discussion, because we all are very passionate about this topic. But thank you again for your wonderful remarks, panel, and it was a pleasure hosting you.
Thank you so much for the incredible panel. Thank you once again.